Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Alissa here. I'm joined by my friend and H7 sister, Rashidat, and she is going to tell you a little bit more about herself and her business in a second. But and we're here to have a real conversation today about something that's been changing the way I move. What happens when women hit their upper limit? The whole conversation started when she actually reminded me about the book, The Big Leap. And the second time I read it, it hit me hard. So today we're unpacking what that looks like in real life and why I created a workshop called Breaking the Cycle for women who are ready to stop shrinking and start receiving more. So let's start with my wonderful guest slash co-creator here today. Rashida, do you want to introduce yourself and then let's jump into what we're going to chat about today?
Yeah. So, hey, I am Rashidat, and I'm a life coach for high capacity women who are ready to stop allowing themselves to be burnt out
Hmm.
and get into putting themselves first. So,
Okay.
I'm excited to talk about this. This is all in the same realm. It's going to be a good conversation.
I think so too. I think that our alignment is very tight here. So
Mhm.
we might be coming at it from our own strengths, but I think we're trying to help women get to the same place. So
Yes.
thanks so much for taking time out to sit and be with me on a Saturday morning, oh, afternoon. I just want to mark time and say that today is May 24th, 2025. And so when you're watching this, you can take that into account and think about where we are in the world and what's happening and where you are and just sort of settle yourself in that space. And if this is like far in the future for you, hopefully it's going to be a happier place and a more cheerful national scene if you're in America. But regardless, I just really wanted to take a second to mark time because that's where we are right now from this conversation. So yeah, I'm really, in alignment with you. I start with a statement. A lot of times it says, I trust women and that our lives matter. Our
Mm,
individual lives matter and our lives collectively matter globally.
mhm.
And I think it's important for me to make that kind of marking statement as well, to just say that that's the orientation I come to this work from, that society, I think, places us in the second, not I think, society places us in the second place. I don't know if there's a third place for us to be, but we're in second place at least. Sometimes it feels like, are we even on this list? I don't know, but we can chat about that. But for me, as a woman, as a Black woman, as an educator, as a mother, all those things, all those roles and all those places that I found myself, fundamentally, I understand my humanity. I understand our humanity and that we matter and not just as a tool for society to place the weight of the world on our backs to carry. This is not directly aligned with what I want to talk about, but it lines up because I said, I thought this yesterday. I always have these thoughts, but I thought this yesterday. I said, if all the uteruses in the world just stopped today, humanity would be done. And I don't think it would take 100 years. It wouldn't take that long.
No,
No,
not at all.
not at all. And I'm just like, do we understand how important we are?
Hmm.
Society, okay, but do women themselves understand how important we are? And so part of what
Hmm.
the work that I do and the way that when I give talks or when I'm in conversations like this is really framing that critical power that we have that has been stripped or that we don't claim or whatever that balance of things is that places us in a position to not understand the critical value that we have individually and again collectively. So I'll say that as another starting place.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you, thank you. Um, so I have to thank you and praise you for letting the universe use you to remind me of this book. The Upper Limit by Gay Hendricks, who is a prolific author. He's also written a book, The Genius Zone, which has also been very monumental in my own thinking about how I want to live my own life, but then how I can also be of service to the world best.
Mm,
And it really frames a lot of the structure of the programming and offerings that I have. And whether that's a free offering like a video or a YouTube video or a TikTok or whatever, to like, individual working with groups or working with individuals about their own growth, what I write, all that jazz. But I know that when I talk about humanity or the importance of our humanity, I'm also talking about that myself. Like I'm still
hmm
growing as a human being, as a woman, as a now mid-50s person, as a now parent to a young adult who has his own
hmm
interesting challenges that he brings to our relationship, all those ways that I am in the world with other people and then with myself, I'm still growing too. And I still absolutely, and I think the thing that I like about uh, Gay Hendricks when he writes, he doesn't frame it as something you can solve completely.
Right.
He said you're going to continue to have this and you need to accept these upper limits. But I guess I can start by defining upper limit, and I'd love you to talk about or think about what you think the upper limit is. But when he's talking about it and my understanding of upper limits, it's really talking about how we have kind of a set temperature that gets set very early about how
hmm
much joy or how much satisfaction or how much happiness we allow in our lives. And sometimes when we excel in one area, then we unknowingly, I don't like the word unconscious because that's a whole psychological thing, but we may unknowingly sabotage ourselves in a different area to keep that temperature or that water level at a certain level because we don't allow ourselves, we don't know how to allow ourselves, I guess, how to let that rise and rise. The thing I love about his work as well, which is also sort of the way that I at least theoretically approach my own life, is there's so much more. There's
hmm
Life is so much more expansive than we know. That,
hmm
when we think about creation and the universe and all that stuff, I try to remind myself on a daily basis, if I'm asking for something, to say, this is the baseline. I know that my mind can only think so much, but if you have something better in mind that you want to deliver to me, please do. But it's in this direction, it's in this area. And
hmm
so I tie that to this idea of upper limit because part of the growth, I think, for women in general, for myself, for women in general, is expanding what we think is possible for us in our lives.
hmm
And I know this
hmm
relates to your work, and I want to give you some space to talk about that. But if you're thinking about an upper limit, what do you think about?
Yeah, so I think what comes to mind for me when I think about gay
Mhm.
is, and how he explained it, is that he's giving us a picture of what self-sabotage looks like.
Yeah.
Like it's really easy to say that word,
Mhm.
but like it doesn't necessarily bring instances to your mind. But when you bring actual like behaviors and things into your mind, then it actually becomes tangible and it becomes something that we can change. It
Yeah.
becomes something that we can own. And when we can own it, we can actually take action to fix it, to be different, rather than just saying the concept self sabotage. So I love how tangible and practical the things that he said, because I was like, oh, if I'm doing that, then I can fix this. Like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
actually like reality. Then it feels, instead of being like, instead of being a regret that feels like something that I'm stuck with now.
Yeah.
Now it feels like something that I can grow and actually take action from, rather
Mhm.
than being stuck. And I think that's a place of freedom. And yes, I talk about that all the time
Mhm.
because our self-worth is so connected to so many other things that we've internalized from other people. Like you said, like us having to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders.
Yeah.
That was something that we internalized. We didn't come into the world thinking that.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
as life continued and things happened and we learned what our place in the world was, then
Absolutely.
we started making our self-worth, our dignity, everything that we do about the people around us rather than us being at the center and saying, if I come up and be my beautiful, most authentic self without all the mud of what everybody else says I should be off of me, if I could just be myself, then everybody else gets a beautiful overflow. But that's not how we've been set up to do it. We've been set up to take on everybody else's mud and then we can never get out of it.
Absolutely. You articulated that so beautifully, and I 100% agree that I know that in my what I call the hard years, which were 20 years, but
Mm,
like the marriage, the divorce, the caregiving through the end of my dad's life, the parenting, the
mm,
career, the whatever, like all those like really intense period that I would go down a path of giving, 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 giving till I was empty. Then I
mhm,
would either rebel, divorce my husband, I would rebel and act up, or I would be so miserable that I would say, I don't even want to hear your complaints anymore, ma'am. So
mhm,
either do something about this or shut up, right?
mhm,
But when I became more gentle with myself as I grew, I started to say, what do you want? You know,
mhm,
ask these other people all what they want. You've met the needs of the job and the husband and the kid and the whatever, the community, the family, whatever. But what do you want? And I
mhm,
started talking about this a couple years ago. I gave a public talk in New Jersey at a performing arts center called The Future of Women. And one of the primary questions was, what do you want to my audience? And women have a hard time even articulating that,
mhm,
even identifying what we want. And I feel like that's a
mhm,
different way of upper limiting because it's
mhm.
like you can't even get to the space because you've been
Yeah.
in service position, you've been in this hard place or whatever for so long, disconnected from yourself and your needs and your wants, it's hard to even think to frame what would please me in this situation, or even better, or did it maybe differently, what's good for me, which is one
Mhm,
question of the practice I have with women is can you look at every even minute decision in your world and ask yourself, is this good for me? Before
right.
I answer, before I get to this next point, before I default to a yes to somebody else.
Yeah.
Can I ask
Yeah.
myself first? But yeah, what do you want? And then is it good for me? Seems so importantly framing for women.
Yeah, it was a question that I asked myself as well. It was back in 2016. I was just about done paying off my last student loan payment,
Mm,
and it finally like gave me the space to say, "Hmm, if I don't want to do this, what would I do?" And I had absolutely no answer.
mhm,
And I remember that it felt like, well, I should have an answer because I'm a goal oriented person. Like, why do I not have an answer to this? And so I think we get the idea of goals, but
mhm,
the difference between what I love your specific question, like, what do I actually, what will serve me? We get those things mixed up. And
mhm,
then we end up without an answer. We end up very much like just doing the next best thing, the next best thing. Because I don't know how to, it's like we haven't had the space to ask that question, which is why I do spend a whole phase in my program, 6 weeks of just talking about that.
mhm,
Because we get so far away from our own identity and what we actually need for ourselves that when it's time to actually reconnect back to that, it's like grasping at straws. We can't find anything. It's a powerful first question. I love that you bring that up as the first thing you talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'm going to pause actually because I want you to, I'm going to give you a little advertisement right here in the middle. Can you talk to us about what you do and what you, how you what your offer is, how you actually are serving women or and how you're inviting women in to work with you.
Yeah, so I have a group coaching and retreat experience that's all about taking a step back and getting reconnected to who we are
Hmm.
so that we could move forward with us at the center. We
Okay.
have been really good at being here. I need to be a good mom. I need to be a good wife, a good sister, a good this, a good that, a good employee, a good business owner. It's also wrapped up in our goals as well. And I ask us like, hey, like, can we just like take a step back? And a lot of times we take a step back. Well, I want to achieve this purpose thing, and I'm like, let's take another step back. Let's go back a little bit
Going back.
more. Let's
Right.
keep going, okay? But in that, we start to realize, wow, these were things about me that I don't even think I ever allowed to bloom. I never even allowed that seed to be planted. And
Mm.
we start making space for those seeds of us to be planted. And then everything that comes after that is different is more about our overflow and who we actually are and showing up in that
Yeah.
rather than feeling like I have to be the strong one. I have to be the one that makes sure everything gets done. I can't leave my husband to his own devices. He might burn down the house. Like we take off all of that pressure and
Uh-huh.
see, listen, they got to learn how to show up too. But we've been so busy running to the finish line first
Hmm.
that we don't give them the space to show up. And so my whole program is about shifting that within us
Hmm.
so that we can actually get to being this rested queen. What I want for us more than anything to be a rested queen who gets to live and flow,
Mm.
who's fully nourished emotionally, mentally, physically, but also very much centered. And then the one who's actually cared for. And it allows us to create that space. My offer allows us to create that space through our conversations,
Mm.
our experiences, the like minded women that are like, you know what? Forget Black excellence. I'm trying to be C plus so I can live my best life. Okay. Like
Please get
that's the
degrees.
vibe that we're catering, right?
Please
So
get
yes.
degrees, says the Harvard PhD. I didn't get that, but you know. That's so funny. But yeah, I love that. I love that. So your information will be in the description of the video. People can reach out to you, but I wanted to pause to let you share with us the powerful thing that you're offering. And I love
Thank you.
that absolutely. I feel like again, there's so much, and we did not plan this, y'all. This is just God and the universe working. But I think there's so much synergy between our two orientations to supporting women. Um, so for me, it's thinking about starting at this upper limit issue, really identified. I've identified 13 areas that really strike that women really bump up against. I won't talk about
Mm,
all of them, but they vary in terms of domains of responsibility, that kind of thing is where we're going to hit
hmm
upper and identity where we hit these upper limits and I think are specifically gendered.
mm,
And so starting with that to really think about even like to this, and again, I start like in a really minute place, like you're feeling happy, things are going well, and then you have a thought that feels like it comes out of nowhere of disaster,
hmm
unrelated to
hmm
what you're doing. But that's how fine-grained upper limiting happens in our lives to keep us at
hmm
this level, to keep us even from these things that we're pointing out and framing, to even keep you from getting to the questions that you could be
hmm
asking yourself
hmm
about how you're thinking, what you're doing, how you're acting, and how you're, I think both of us say the same thing, centering yourself. Um, so for me, I sort of have a leadership lens in a more large sense because yeah, Black excellence for sure. But I feel that my larger vision is that having a world that is woman-centered serves everyone
hmm
because women don't leave everyone out of their decision making,
hmm
where male-centeredness leaves everybody else is a tool for their
Mm-hmm.
purposes, including
Mm-hmm.
us humans, us other humans. The kids and the women are functional for them largely. And so they're not brought into the real thinking about how we live in the world. And when I think about,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a JOB in a long time, thank God. But when I think about people who hate their work and how toxic workplaces are so normalized, like that's comes from male leadership decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We think again, May 24th, 2005, where we are, would we think about what's happening in our country and really internationally in terms of what leadership looks like, that comes from male norms around leadership. And we cannot,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way to dispute my claim because if you look who's made the decisions and look at where we are, you can't say it comes from anything other than that. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, I love all these programs that for decades that have been promoting women to be in leadership and all this stuff, but I also understand that we've only made incremental progress. And I really tie that to things like an upper limit that say that women have been indoctrinated in our
Mm-hmm.
development that keeps us from being able to do more. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
if all the uteruses were off, there wouldn't be any humanity in 100 years. It's just done.
Right.
But no one's really said that. No one's really
Mm-hmm.
putting us forward. And we have to start with individual women to break through those upper limits in ourselves to then in turn externally to say, okay, so how am I making decisions in my family? How am I making decisions in my community? How am I making decisions as a leader in whatever area I find myself in? And sometimes women back away from the idea of being a leader, but I'm sorry, ma'am, you are one.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of where you find yourself, you are a leader of something or someone. And
Mm-hmm.
breaking through these barriers, I think, is the way to create transformation that is not necessarily a revolution because I know we can't outfight male leadership. They're very good at fighting. That's one of their strong suits. That's actually
Mm-hmm.
the primary thing that they bring. But having us become strong in ourselves, centered in ourselves, clear
Mm-hmm.
about a woman-centered or a self-centered perspective as we look at the world and the well-being of the world is the way to get to larger global change that I think is necessary if we're going to perpetuate the species on the planet. I don't mean to
Yeah.
be so large, but that really is sort of underlying my thinking about this.
Yeah. And when I think about what you're saying, the way that I hear it is like the way that we've been trying to break through this barrier and this glass ceiling for ourselves
Mhm.
has looked like us trying to lean into that masculine energy, but we also know that masculine energy is not helpful. It's not, it's that's to do that is not going to change it. And so when I hear you say what the change looks like, it's more like learning how to lean into our feminine energy because
Absolutely.
we can't do the masculine energy. We got to learn how to lean into our feminine energy and leverage that
Yes,
and change the world with that rather than trying to change who we are and how we made up and all of those things to fall into that. Our energy is powerful. And
100%.
we've been kind of made to feel like masculine energy has more power. It's just different power. It's
Mhm.
not more power. It's just different power. And so when I hear you say that, I love that whole mindset that we just need to learn how to lean into our power. And when we do lean into that, we can't just run with it. We just got to learn how to really leverage it because we haven't really seen that on a that kind of global
Mhm.
scale
Right.
um perpetuated, but it can definitely go that way.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So that's my sneaky secret underlying vision for this. Not actually, it's written right in what I'm talking about. But I know that we have to start with ourselves because if we don't fix
Hmm.
this, then we're going to continue to fall for the okey doke of the
Hmm.
patriarchy. We're going to continue to try to put on a tie and some big shoulder pads like in the 80s to try to act like men, but we aren't. And
Mm-hmm.
first of all, there's nothing wrong or less than about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't worked. And the way that things are even backsliding now shows that even if you are the biggest, I don't know if people use this word, pick me, trying to like be in this space of like, I'm gonna go along with the patriarchy is very clever. Like it really
Mm-hmm.
understands how to keep us where it needs to keep us. So for me, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of like, it's not about fighting it, it's about creation because I know that that's what we're good at. Like women are
Mm-hmm.
natural creators. And so
Mm-hmm.
really creating in this space of starting with ourselves, but then taking up more and more of that orientation towards not only what's good for me, but what's good for women, what's good for children, really
Mm-hmm.
what's good for them in this framework that limits what's possible and is
Mm-hmm.
extractive, but what is actually good for the humanity of each individual. And it includes men as well.
Mm-hmm.
Includes men
Because we're
as
always nurturers. Yeah, we've been nurturers from the beginning of time. And
well.
so we've always had that spirit to include everyone. I love it for sure.
Thank you so much. So I'm gonna plug my workshop a little bit. And if you have something
Mm-hmm.
to like literally plug, we'll give you space for that. So Breaking Cycle is the name of the workshop. It is small group. I never have more than 10 women in any group because I want to have space and time for each of us to engage with the idea of upper limiting as first, and then really delving into these 13 areas that I've identified and identifying two or three that you think that women typically have they don't have all, I don't know maybe anybody who had all 13, but who have a handful and start to dig into what that means to change their thinking about that. And then really having an orientation towards centering ourselves and centering our decision making. It's a first step in a longer process because unfortunately there's not a pill for this. We have to work. We have to do the work. But the container begins with this workshop called Breaking the Cycle. I'm going to put a link in the description as well to buying them. They're rolling. So as I get 10 women, then we set a date and then we go from there. And that's kind of how that works. But really the emphasis is on women becoming their own liberators and stepping out of
Mm,
that internalized oppression. That's the first step to that and the
yeah.
larger global change where we are right at the top. We're at
Yeah.
the
I
center,
mean,
not at the top. Men like the top. We want to be at the center.
yes, yes. I mean, you also just dropped like a couple taglines in there that, girl, you need to use that. It was, well, women are our own liberators. And there was a second half to that statement, girl. All of that.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. I'll listen back. I got it in my notes. But yeah, thanks.
Yes, yes. Okay. And so along that lines, I think we're again we have a great synergy because we both understand that for us as women to be able to move forward, we have to first assess where we are. We have to understand um that this is not a luxury, that it's not something that we can keep putting off. Like in order for us to truly see not just ourselves, but our families and our legacies, our generations after us to continue to see a better world,
Mm,
we as a women have to see where we are today and see how we're going to change that. And so, in that same lane, I have an assessment that's called What's Blocking Your Soft Life.
okay.
And because I truly believe when we take care of ourselves first, everything else flows. It flows. And
Absolutely.
so this quiz is just a 9 question assessment of each woman taking an assessment of their self to see here's where I am today. And
Mhm.
here's what it looks like for me to get to that rested queen, that soft life that I know that I deserve.
Yeah.
And so we can put the link to that down in the description as well. And again, this is the first step because you're right. It's not a pill. It doesn't change overnight. We've been internalizing this pressure, this tension, this responsibility over responsibility, actually,
Yes.
since the dawn of time. And if we want to change that, it takes longer than a pill. So that's what this work is together. Once we get into my program to work through it.
I love it. I love it. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing time and space with me today. I know that everybody who's watching is getting a huge amount of value from this, and I look forward to them joining both of us so that they
Hmm.
can heal from both sides. I,
Yes.
I love being a rested queen. I love being that. I like sort of breaking through space from the hard years into my next part of life. Like this couch, that bed are certainly my friends. This patio out here, the pool are all places that I'm like, okay, I get to set it down. And
Yeah.
we can both set it down and then take up something that's going to be incredible, I think, for
Hmm.
ourselves and for our world. So again, my guest, you want to say your name, your program again?
Yeah. So I am Rashidat, and my program is called Meant for More because you deserve more than just being a workhorse. I'm excited to help you get into that.
I love that. And I'm Dr. Alissa, and you can join me for Breaking the Cycle, which is the first step in your transformation to put yourself at the center. Thanks again for being with us. Bye bye.